Audio unleashed.
I'm enjoying the calm before the storm.
Are we going to storm? Are we a tempest
Maybe.
now?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think the ranting duty's going to fall to you on one of these.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm normally the in-house ranter, but one of these, but it's not going to be the first one we talk about. It's going to be the second one. The first one we're going to talk about is the EISA Awards, and that stands for, God, who cares?
Expert Imaging and Sound Association.
Yeah, it used to be European, right? I think. Anyway, it's a group of umpteen publications, a few dozen publications, and they get together every year to award the latest and greatest whatever. And it's, a lot of the publications that you and I have been involved with over the years, well, I did write like 2 articles for Stereophiles. I guess that counts. But, like Stereophiles in it and Soundstages in it.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of, Euro publications. I think it's still dominated by European publications. Oh, our friend Carlo Rosso's in there with the
Secrets?
His website, Secrets, yeah. And just joined it, apparently. I saw on I think Facebook. And so anyway, a lot of publications, and they pick stuff that's in audio, video, and camera, right? Anything else? But anyway, so
yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think so.
So normally, we've talked about their awards before, but in this case, and I was kind of like, I saw the thing came out because all the websites that are involved have to post it, right? And I thought, well, I'll click it and just see what kind of junk they put in there. I guess we'll make fun of them again. But that is not what happened. I was just kind of like, wow, there's like no crap in here.
Wow. Wow.
It was so refreshing. Maybe the audio press is turning a new leaf, or at least the majority of the audio press.
Or maybe they're just getting overruled, man. I don't know.
But anyway, we're gonna look at some of the products they recommended as the best of the year, and kind of talk about the overall trends that maybe we're seeing.
Yeah.
And after that, then what are we going to talk about?
After that, we're going to infuriate some audiophiles because I think it's fair to say most people my age, and you got me, maybe plus or minus 5 years. You ask them who the most important composer of their youth is, and I think a lot of us would say Koji Kondo, and I think most audiophiles would be like, "Quoi? Who is this?" Koji Kondo wrote the music of my youth. He wrote the theme songs for so many of the greatest Nintendo Entertainment System video games. He wrote all of the music for Super Mario Brothers. He wrote all of the music for Legend of Zelda. And the most recent episode of 20,000 Hertz, which is a great audio-related podcast, our friend Lauren Dragon has been on there, is about Koji Kondo's 8-bit masterpiece. And it breaks down the music for Super Mario Brothers, not only in terms of technical specifications and, cultural impact, but also music theory in a really fascinating way. And I just thought it would be worth talking about this and talking about perceptions of what proper music is to a lot of people in our hobby, and why those perceptions at least don't necessarily resonate with me. And a lot of people, I think. So anyway, we'll dig deeper into that. What do you want to talk about after that?
I want to talk about the truth about an empire that almost ruled. And this is cheapaudioman.
Yeah.
Famous YouTuber, very successful, who I recently interviewed for an article that has yet to appear on Wirecutter, but will someday. Anyway, he does like a whole history of Monster Cable, and which I thought was really interesting because I was there for almost the entire history of Monster Cable and watched it grow from, nothing to huge to pretty close to nothing again. Yeah. And Anyway, he goes through the whole thing, and I got a kick out of watching it, and it was just brought back so many memories, both good and bad. But you got to face the past and the future.
Yeah,
and the
absolutely. Well, only occasionally the present.
Yeah.
I think Orwell had something to say about that.
And then we're going to, for our Patreon subscribers, we have something very special. And what is that?
We do. So this is actually a speaker review that you had posted to the idea board. I have to let you in a little secret, buddy. A lot of times you provide great commentary in our idea board. And I always read the commentary that you put in the idea board. But before I do that, I actually click on the link itself and just form my own impressions. And then I go back and read your impressions. Because, I mean, come on, man. You're such a force of nature. Like, you tend to have very strong opinions about things. So I want to sort of make up my own mind about it and then go, okay, what does Brent think? So this is a link to a stereophile review by Mr. Ken McAuliffe, who I think we both like, although I think you've got much closer connections to him than I do. I just sort of admire him from afar, I think. But anyway, this is a Volti Audio Lucera loudspeaker, and I looked at the image at the top of this page, and I was just immediately like, well, this is probably not going to be a speaker I would like for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
But then I read Ken's review, and I thought, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a horn speaker that I would truly love. And then I looked at the measurements, and I thought, I might be missing something here. I don't know.
Will this thing even work? Will it even work if I plug it into an amp?
Yeah. So anyway, I think we're going to do one of our deep dives into a stereophile review. But I think also probably this time there's an opportunity to really spell out like what goes through our minds step by step as we're picking apart one of these reviews. What are we responding to? And I think we're going to do it kind of in real time here. So that's going to be fun. And I hope patrons dig it. But first, before we get to that, let's talk about EISA. How would you pronounce EISA?
EISA. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like the stupidest possible pronunciation, because that's what
I think the stupidest possible pronunciation would be something like EISA.
EISA. All right, we're going to call it EISA.
What have I done? Yeah. As you pointed out, we've talked about these awards before, the EISA Awards, and we've sort of picked apart the choices and sort of walked through them. But this year is a little different. I think you and I are both looking at this list going, smart choice. There's just a lot of really solid, no-nonsense choices here for great stereo gear, great home theater gear, great turntables. There's only like one or two that I saw in the bunch where I was like, I'm not a voter, so I can't say too much. But for the most part, I'm looking at this list going, dang, this is the right answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like the first speaker they chose, the very first thing you see on the list is, the Sonus Faber Sonetto VG2. And it's a tower speaker, and it's beautiful. It's Sonus Faber, all their stuff is beautiful. And and you look at it and you're like, it's possible the speaker's got a really badly done crossover, but Sonus Faber, I think maybe in some cases they've not hit everything out of the park, but this thing's probably fine, and it's a beautiful product. There's no reason it shouldn't work. It's not like sometimes you look at these high-end things and you're just like, oh God, it's going to look like somebody raided the brass section of a high school band's locker and like sawed off the bells and nailed them onto a wooden box. I mean, some of this stuff is so wacky, but these are like, this is totally fine. I'm sure this thing works. I don't know what it costs. It's Sonus Faber and it's beautiful, so I'm sure it costs a lot. It's probably $25,000 a pair.
I think the original that I looked, I think I might have reviewed not the G2, but the original, or maybe that's not the original. Maybe it's just a lower version, but like the Sonetto V, I think was like maybe 5,000 a pair. You know what? I just Googled
so maybe
the
these are
VG2.
10 or 15?
These are like 7,000 a pair.
You're kidding me.
So that's not bad for what they are. That is really, for what they are, I think not bad at all.
That seems like a bargain, frankly, because they're beautiful speakers. Like, these are what you would have in your home, and people would go, wow.
Really gorgeous.
Your speakers are really beautiful. I mean, if you care about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's like shockingly, because, and so much, that's another thing is like so much of high-end audio is just all these over-the-top prices and stuff, and all these websites fall all over themselves trying to make excuses for that. I don't have to make an excuse for this if it's really selling for what you're saying it's selling for. Man,
yeah, 7,000 a pair on audio advice. Yeah. And let's paint a word picture here, because these things are so they've got this really, really cool deal where there's like an array for the mid and tweeter, and you've got a magnetically affixed fitted grill that goes over that, and then you get individually magnetically affixed grills for both of the woofers. It just is, if you want speaker grills, then they're elegant, unobtrusive, and look very tailor-made. If you don't want speaker grills, the speaker just looks like $1 million. It looks like a musical instrument in many regards.
It does.
And the original, or I don't know if it's the original, again, the Sonata V without the G2 was just a fantastic sounding speaker for the price. So I just have to imagine that this one is as well. So, yeah.
But then you go down the list, it's like Kef Q Concerto Meta. Well, fine. Well, that speaker works.
Yep.
The Triangle Borea BR04, which I just tested for Wirecutter, and it's like a step up from the BR03, which is one of our picks. And it's really kind of the same speaker, bigger cabinet, a little different bass tuning, they reworked the crossover a little bit, and it's a very good sounding speaker. It's like $600 a pair. And I don't think you're going to find a better bookshelf than these for $600 a pair.
Right.
The Focal Diva Utopia, another speaker that looks like it's quite nice, and it's and it's streaming. It's got it's an active speaker. It's a really
We talked about the upgraded version of this a few episodes back, but this is the one that's $40,000 a pair. And it's like, if you're going to spend $40,000 a pair on a pair of speakers, like, this is the speaker you should be spending $40,000 a pair. Or no, let me take that back. If I had $40,000 a pair to spend on speakers, this is the $40,000 pair of speakers I would buy. Let me put it that way. So I can't tell you how to spend your money, but yeah, this is high end done right, in my opinion.
I keep seeing, like, I'm going down. It's like, okay, here's a musical fidelity integrated. Okay, well, that's going to be reasonably priced and probably works fine. Same with this Marantz streaming amp. Same with, here's a Denon turntable. Here's, Denon CD player. Here's a Hagel, what is that, CD player? Or is it a DAC? Is it a CD player and DAC?
The Hagel is a DAC, yeah. So
okay, it's a DAC.
D50.
Yeah. So it just looks like a CD player. I mean, this is all perfectly fine, non-stupid stuff.
Blue Sound Node as a streamer? Yes, please.
Yeah. I mean, and it's also like none of this stuff is stupidly expensive. I mean, some of it's expensive, but it's not this stuff where you're like, oh God, where you're looking at it, it's like, okay, here's a, $80,000 amplifier. Well, why does an amplifier need to be $80,000? Well, because they wanted to make an $80,000 amplifier.
Right. I mean, I guess the closest you could really come to that I've seen so far is this, there's a category for high-end integrated amplifier, and they chose the Marantz Model 10. The Marantz Model 10 is $15,000. But I have to say, you look at that thing, and it looks like it $15,000 worth of integrated amplifier. Now, does any of that affect performance? I don't. It would be you would have difficulty convincing me that it does. But if you are talking about a luxury experience, if you're talking about interfacing with something that just feels nice and looks nice and is built like a gorgeous tank, has all of the inputs and outputs you could, ever need. I'm looking at this going, it's $15,000 integrated amp easily, but a lot of the companies that we talk about would charge $150,000 for it. So So yeah, again, expensive, but not stupidly expensive.
Right. I'm trying to find something in here I don't like, or that I think like, oh, why is that getting an award?
I'm not a fan of the B&W PX7 S3. Well, I haven't heard the S3. I didn't like the PX7. I didn't like the PX7 S2. Maybe the S3 I would love.
Is that
I don't know.
headphones?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they've got these Meze Audio Poets, which I have not heard, but I have not heard some of the cheaper Meze Audios are really like $300 ones. I'm kind of like, it's all right. But all of the bigger ones I've liked. The B&W Bowers & Wilkins, whatever. PX7, a lot of the Bowers & Wilkins headphones the frequency response is a little wacky. So I have not heard these, Bowers & Wilkins still continues to get, what's the word? What's the phrase I'm looking for? They get to play the British card. And they get this respect, and a lot of writers like, oh, Bowers & Wilkins, it's like, wait a minute, they're owned by Samsung now. So, this product does not have, it's not like some guy, came out of, designing the latest version of the 801 speaker and then went and worked on these headphones.
Right.
So, it's kind of, I'm not saying they're bad, but like, whatever. I'd probably, honestly, the Dali headphones that are competing with the Bowers & Wilkins stuff are the ones that I have generally liked the best. And they're typically like $500, and they're like, God, these things sound really good, and the noise canceling's decent, and they're comfortable, and the design's not stupid, and all that kind of thing. And the frequency response is, somewhere near Harman curve, so not silly.
Yeah.
So what else we got down here?
Oh, wait.
I'm still looking for something I hate.
Here's why these EISA Awards write-ups are sometimes very useful, because here's a problem that I had with the PX7 that I don't know if this was a function of the S2, but the S3 at least has app-based customizable EQ. If you could tweak the frequency response of the PX7, I think I would have liked it a lot better.
I'm sure.
It was just a funky frequency response. So maybe they've listened, and maybe that's what it would need. Maybe I would love these. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I remember Soundstage when I was there. I think it was Andrea Sundaram did a review of the Bowers & Wilkins something or another, and it was a passive model. Was it a passive or an active model? I can't remember. But anyway, he was doing the review, and I liked him, and I liked his reviews. And so I said, yeah, fine, you do the review, even though I was the headphone editor. But then he listened to me. He said, hey, can you measure these things? And you're going to measure them anyway. Can you measure these things and get back to me with the measurements? I want to do a deep dive on EQing these things. And he did, and he got a lot better sound out of them, pretty much from just taking the correction curve that I generated for him, and then just tweaking it a little bit from there.
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing is, EQ, once you start getting into headphones, you can fix so much with EQ. Since things like dispersion and all that are not really an issue anymore.
Yeah.
So come on, we got to find something we don't like.
I don't know. I'm intrigued by this Musical Fidelity M8X vinyl phono preamp.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that.
It's $4,299, but I'm looking at everything that it does, going, I'd like to hear that. I'd like to hear that because it's basically tons of gain options. You've got support for moving coil and moving magnet. It's an improved gain stage with 3 stages. Dual split passive EQ stage, 2-step subsonic filter. Do you need a $4,300 phono preamp? No. Do I kind of want it anyway? I mean, I feel like you're getting something for your money here that's pretty cool. So it's hard for me to poo-poo that, man.
Well, vinyl, a lot of vinyl people like to have a lot of different loading options and things like that because it gives them something to play with.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And those things actually do make a difference.
I've never found myself to be I need something to play with audio enthusiast. until I got into vinyl. And now I'm like, ooh, I want to play with it. I don't know why. I guess it's just the sort of tactile nature of it all. It unlocked something in my brain that had never been unlocked before, but I want to experiment, man.
Well, because it works. Because when you make changes on vinyl to the loading and things like that, you probably hear a difference.
Yeah.
And it's not like some of these other things like, figuring out the best possible compliance for your cable lifters or something and making up differences. But, this thing has a lot of adjustability to it. Yeah. And it also seems to be really well made. And this is a cool thing. I like this. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a $4,000 Phonoprix if that's what you want to buy. No. I don't care.
Let's see. SBS has got their new subwoofer, the SB1700 Ultra R. They did the sealed version.
Yeah, I wish I could review this thing.
I'd probably lean toward the ported version if I were buying one.
Yeah, me too. Me too. See, audiophiles a lot of times fall for, there's nothing wrong with this subwoofer. And I haven't tested it, but look, how many SVS subwoofers have sucked? Well, probably 0. And, this is probably great. I'd love to hear it. But, a lot of times these SVS things are really well engineered. And when you have the sealed box and they got a powerful amp behind them, they can generate really artificially punchy bass. And audiophiles tend to fall for that. But, I remember I was testing an SVS, one of the sealed ones. And I'm listening to it, and I'm listening to my own record on it, my own album on it. And I'm like, I own the instrument that was on this album. And that sound is not on this instrument.
Yeah.
Yep. And if it's an electric bass to an amp, well, maybe. But like I play double bass. I play an acoustic instrument. I was like this, puh, 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 puh. It's like double basses just don't do that, no matter what amp you put them through. And I'm kind of like, all right, well, people like it.
I've never had that problem with any of their ported subs, though, No,
the ported subs sound like, my bass sounds like it's supposed to sound through their ported subs.
Yeah.
But through their sealed subs, it's excessively punchy. And I think maybe for rock people, they love that thrill, that wild ride. And for, R&B and pop and all that kind of stuff, it's probably a great choice. And you get a little bit of a thrill ride effect out of it. But I think for jazz and classical, this whole idea that sealed subs are better, I strongly disagree. Strongly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, buddy, we're at the end of the list, man. I don't think I got much else to say. You want to take a break and get some water and come back and talk about video games?
Let's do it.
All right. We'll be right back, y'all. Welcome back. This is Audio
Unleashed.
Nice. And this time around,
you got to change it up once in a while.
You do, man. You got to keep me on my toes. So this time around, we're talking about podcast, another podcast, 20,000 Hertz, which is one of my favorite non-Audio Unleashed podcasts. Dallas Taylor is the host, and our friend Lauren Dragon from Wirecutter has been on the podcast. This is a little bit of a different one, though. So normally he talks about all sorts of different things that are audio related. And it's everything from like, why do insurance companies still have jingles when nobody else still has jingles? And he talks about the sounds of apps. And he talks about, producing audio for films because they run an audio production company, De Facto Sound. This one, though, was about Koji Kondo, who was the composer of all of the great classic Nintendo Entertainment System video game soundtracks. He wrote the theme music for Legend of Zelda. He wrote the theme music for Punch-Out, all of those. But this episode in particular talks about Super Mario Brothers, which I think is a good reason. I mean, there's got to be at least 15 million videos on YouTube of people playing the Super Mario Brothers theme on all sorts of different instruments, from, Spanish guitars to crazy Japanese instruments I've never heard of to bagpipes and everything in between. This music from my generation really resonates. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, if you're trying to find somebody hiding and they're like roughly my age, they're Gen X, and you walk in and you go, da-da-da-da-da-bum, you could just, like, they're going to reveal themselves because they're going to start going, bum-bum-bum-bum-ba-da-da-da. So anyway, I just thought it was a really great episode, but it got me thinking, is this the sort of thing that we could talk about on Audio Unleashed? Because so often audiophiles get pissy with me when I use video game music in my reviews, but like not even video game music like this. I'm talking about like full scores, full orchestra productions. They're like, why are you using video game? That's not proper music. That's video game crap. But I think there's a really good case to be made that Koji Kondo is one of the most important composers of the late 20th century, if only for the fact that so many of his compositions are so memorable. Being as repetitive as they are, they never got old. I mean, you play Super Mario Brothers, and when I was a kid, you'd sit there and play for 8 hours, and you're hearing that theme over and over and over, and it's not that long, and it never got boring. And there's something to be said for that. But I also love this podcast for simply its discussion of the limitations of the hardware that he was working with, man.
That's what was fascinating to me. And it reminded me of, the early 80s when, you could buy a Mini Moog synthesizer or an ARP Odyssey. There were only like a couple synths out there on the market. Yeah. And around the end of the 70s. And, they were super, and actually like my friend George, my college roommate George, who's a drummer, was like built one. And it was super primitive. He wanted to use it for drum triggering, right? Yeah. And that stuff didn't exist. And, I was listening to this podcast. I'm like, that's exactly what George had to go through. Cause like you have like super, super primitive. Okay. You can choose a couple of waveforms. You can't really do much with them, but you can choose a couple of is sine or sawtooth or square or whatever. And they sound like this. And, and he's had like such a limited amount to work with, but he got it to work, and he made memorable music that way. And that's what really impressed me. And it just made me think like, wow, you can do great music with the most primitive of things. Yeah. But then actually they were shown, they played like the later versions of the music where there was a lot more to work with, and they were kind of like, it's fine. I thought it kind of took away a lot of the fire. It's like if you I know the Ramones got who's the guy with the nut with the gun, the wall of sound guy? Didn't they have the wall of sound guy?
Phil Spector.
Yeah, Phil Spector. I think he did something before. But like getting the Ramones and like hooking them up with, I don't know, Daniel Lanois or something would probably be like a kind of bad idea. It would take a lot of the edges off of the Ramones. And I felt like, wow, having more fancy stuff took the edges off of ding, 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 ding. And but it was funny because they really did a deep dive on this, and they went back and found all these kind of like obscure Japanese artists that he pretty much swiped all the melodies from.
I was surprised. Like I'm big into Cassiopeia, which is one of the bands they talk about, but they didn't pull any of the themes directly from Cassiopeia. But another band that is like, they've sort of been on the edge of my Cassiopeia fandom, called T-Square. I haven't listened to them much, but apparently I need to listen to them more because, one of the melodies he pretty much just straight up ripped off from T-Square. And then there was another like American prog band. I can't remember the name of that one, but it seemed to have very much inspired the underground theme in Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
I really love the discussion of the meter in that underground theme when they were counting it, because I never really thought of it before, but the underground theme is very disconcerting because for any of you who can't, like, you'll know when I hum it, but it's the one that's like dun 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 da-na-na-na-na-na. Da-na-na-na. But anyway, it goes through and like Dallas Taylor counts it. And to count that, you're going to use like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And you were talking earlier about how the later versions of the song didn't resonate with you as much. I don't think it was merely the production. I think it was the fact that they simplified a lot of his compositions, because that was the original Super Mario Brothers is the only time the underground theme was in that crazy, funky, disconcerting meter. After that, they always converted it to 4/4, and it lost something, you know?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it does. I mean, you know, Sinatra was famous for never singing in 3/4, and I don't think he ever did, but you know, he would Fly Me to the Moon's in 3/4, but he did it in 4/4, and that became the standard. And now you play it on, you know, jazz gigs and stuff, and people have no idea that it was originally in 3. They've only ever heard the version in 4.
Yeah.
Wives and Lovers, same thing. But of course, they had Sinatra singing them, so you know, and whoever, you know, Nelson Riddle or somebody doing the arrangements. So of course, it was great, but like. In this case, I really think it lost a lot, and it actually reminded me of playing sometimes with musicians when you're like, what's that Beatles song, Across the Universe? There are a lot of like extra bars in there and extra beats in there, because I think it was just John Lennon kind of playing it without a lot of sort of discipline, and you know, the rest of the band I think is not on it, and you know, there's some orchestration and everything on it, but you know, George Martin could take the parts, write out the parts, and just have the string players read them. And string players, good ones, will just read. You put the music in front of them, and they read it, and they go home. Yeah, and you know, but like trying to get rock musicians to actually play that, forget it. Yeah, and so I guess that's the thing, is they got tired of. I guess they kind of felt like, oh, it's just too complicated and weird. Let's just make it more generic. And that was disappointing, because like the original sounded so cool, and when they redid it in 4, it lost all of its sort of menace.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? And then there was also the part where he was talking about like the sort of dominant 7 chords tend to want to resolve, but like the music that he wrote when you've got like a minute left in a level is just like building tension, building tension, building tension, building tension, and it never resolves. But it's kind of like just little things like that really open your mind to how compositionally brilliant these seemingly simple and repetitive tunes are. I don't know. I just found it fascinating. There was also another podcast. I sent it to you. I don't know if you had a time to watch this one. It was from Imaginary Worlds.
I didn't.
There was another one that recently, and it's funny. The one we're talking about is called Super Mario Brothers Koji Kondo's 8-bit masterpiece. The episode from Imaginary Worlds was 8-bit to orchestra video game music scores. And it's funny, we're talking about how the technical limitations of Koji Kondo's compositions in a lot of ways make them so memorable, but this Imaginary Worlds podcast talks about how radically different video game music scoring is today, especially in the way the people who are writing the scores are a lot of times writing stems that will be combined dynamically depending on what the action is. So they kind of have to write music that can be mixed in real time. And I thought that was fascinating. And also, there was one revelation from that episode that I wanted to talk to you about, because I think there are implications here. There was a scoring house, and they were talking to one of the people that works at the scoring house. Is sort of a cooperative of composers who work on different things, but a lot of their work is video games. And he was like, these days, if we're writing a score that's going to be recorded with a full orchestra, it's way more likely to be a video game score than a movie score, because movies just don't have the budgets for full orchestras anymore. And I found that really shocking, but I got to thinking about it, like just some of the money that is poured into these video games. I mean, and rightly so, because they make a lot of money. You know, when Grand Theft Auto came out a bazillion years ago, it made $1 billion on the day it came out. You know, there have been some movies that made $1 billion, but not the first day, right? So video games are playing around with, well, at least for now, quite different budgets than movies are. But if you want to hear music composed for a full orchestra, these days, it's far more likely to be a video game than it is a movie. I just found that really, really fascinating.
It's interesting, and it makes the point that like it is worth having good audio gear to play video games. I'm saying that as an observer, not as someone, not from my own experience, because I don't play video games. But nothing against them. No. I used to be the video game editor of Video Magazine a long time ago.
I know. And you've got a great story about Parappa the Rapper, which is one of my favorite video games of all time.
That's the best video game ever.
Yeah.
And, well, now granted, that's like someone saying Kenny G's the best jazz saxophone player. It's like, have you ever heard, which other ones have you heard? You know,
I've played most of them, buddy, and I got to tell you, Parappa the Rapper is one of the greatest games of all time. I mean, come on, man.
Good to know.
Kick, punch, it's all in the mind. Yeah, man. It's classic. But what was the story you had about? You were telling me about somebody who actually sight read Parappa from beginning to end.
Oh, yeah. So I was playing with one of the musicians I was playing with at the time was a drummer and really good vibes player. And his name was Jack. I can't remember his last name. And he lived in the same building I lived in Astoria, Queens. And so I got this game because I was writing for PlayStation Magazine at the time, and about like audio and video, right? And so they sent me a PlayStation and all these games, and the editor's like, "Dude, you have to play Parappa the Rapper." I'm like, "Okay," and so I started playing. Like, God, and people kept coming over to play it. Everyone was like so into it. And this guy came, and several of my musician friends came over. They loved it. This guy came in, and it took me, I think there were only 5 or 6 levels, and it took me.
Should we describe the gameplay just for people who maybe are lost here? So,
sure.
This was a precursor in a lot of ways to games like Guitar Hero and things like that. So you had your buttons on the PlayStation controller, your triangle, square, and all of that. And with Parappa the Rapper, you would have basically a notation at the bottom of the screen, and you would have to hit the triangle when it was time. That would be the note. To hit the right note or to say the right rap, you would have to hit the triangle at exactly the right time. And if you were too far off, then you would flub the line and things like that. So it's almost like you're taking this PlayStation controller and turning it into a musical instrument, and you've got to sight read that based on what's going on the screen and play it in real time. But it is a lot harder than it sounds.
But so Jack, this vibes and drum player, he came in. I'm like, I got this great game. You got to check it out. And he comes over. He starts playing. He's like, oh, man, this is great. He sight read all the way. He did not miss a beat until the very last level. And it took him 2 or 3 tries to get through that one. Just went through the entire game right there, right in front of me, all the way through.
That is infuriating, but it had to have been an amazing sight. So
it was awesome. Well, he was such I miss that guy. He was such a great player and great guy.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to him long ago, man.
Anyway, I don't think I got a whole lot more insight to pour into this one, buddy. I mostly just wanted to point people to these 2 podcasts, and also just implore people, don't get caught up on what is and isn't proper music. I mean, this is some of the greatest music ever made, and it sounds like crap by audiophile standards, but who cares? If it moves your soul, if it makes you feel something, then it's done its job. And if it doesn't, it's not hurting you.
Yeah. I mean, this is good. This is good music. I love those. Having owned some of those instruments back then, I love those instruments. They were a kick to play, and it was fun. And it's notes. It's all the same notes. It's just we're all working with 12 notes, man.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a break. Go get another drink of water. And I need to powder my nose. And then we will come back and talk about the truth about an empire that almost ruled.
Yeah.
I need to start doing voiceover for Randy's. Like, he needs to start doing like trailers, and I do voiceovers for them. In a world.
All right.
Anyway. All right. We'll be right back.
got to say, now, we are back, and this is Audio
Unleashed.
And we're going to talk about cheapaudioman and a recent video that he did, which caught my eye because I lived through the whole thing. And it's fun to look at the TV screen, so to speak, and say, hey, I was there. And that's something that I think very few people are still alive. Well, some, I guess, a couple of the Stereophile guys, John Atkinson, I guess, a couple others, Michael Fremer, a few others. But I'm probably the youngest one who's been through all this stuff.
Yeah.
Not that I'm even close to young, but anyway, he goes through. So Randy Messman, cheapaudioman, takes you through the whole history of Monster Cable. And it is an astounding history because it's like, higher highs and lower lows than most audio companies ever experience, because they went from a garage literally, like a car trunk operation to being huge, to being, basically just a licensing operation now.
Yeah.
But it's all, you have to say that this is due to clear mistakes. It's not like, say, a company just, there's hi-fi companies that have gone out of business where you're like, well, the owner kind of got tired of it and lost interest, and they kind of dwindled. They just, lost their, what's the, B&K Components is a great example.
Oh, man, I've still got a B&K amp kicking around here somewhere. Wow, you hopped in the Wayback Machine for that one. Yeah, they made really good amps. They were like a lot of people's top pick of amps. We do blind amp tests at Home Theater Magazine, and they actually won. Like, wow, these are good amps. I knew the owner, John. Shoot, began with a That's a weird name.
But anyway, no, not John Shoot. John, I hadn't talked to him in decades. But anyway, they made really good stuff. They made, some home theater stuff, a lot of 2-channel stuff. But the guy who ran it just kind of, I think, lost interest, and they quit going to trade shows, and interest just dwindled, and somebody bought it, and these things happen. But this is a case of the guy who owned it, Noel Lee. Owned Monster Cable, absolutely did not lose interest, but I think just made a lot of really horrible decisions that were frustrating for a lot of the people that were covering Monster Cable, and I think frustrating for the PR people that worked with Monster Cable and who were trying to get people like you and me to cover them. And but I still have early, I remember, like, way back, the first time I met Noel was probably in 1990, and I was working for Video Magazine, and we needed cables, and Monster Cable was just starting to come out with video cables, and because VCRs were still pretty new, and S-Video cable was still kind of new, and all the ones that were out there were generic ones. And so Noel Lee, who had already started making kind of these super fat speaker cables, and it really started from, like, going around in his car, around California, like driving to hi-fi stores and saying, hey, you should use my cables and or sell my cables, which of course were a lot more expensive, so the hi-fi store could make a margin on them. Right. And that was the whole sort of key, is like, oh, this is an easy thing we can tack onto a sale, and the margin's really good on it. And so, if we're selling a stereo system for a couple $1,000, we can make an extra $200 on cables or something like that, right? Yeah. So it was very popular among dealers, and a lot of the hi-fi press kind of glommed onto it. But I met Noel because I was just like, oh, these, and I think I owned some Monster Cable thing I had bought, because they were doing a lot of, like, guitar cables and things like that. I think they kind of maybe started. They were always doing musical instrument stuff as well as audiophile stuff. Yeah. And so I think I might have had a Monster guitar cable or something. And so I called him up, and you could just, like, call up Noel Lee and talk to him on the phone. And he came and visited me, and, brought me some cables, and, we went out to lunch at, like, the Carnegie Deli or something, which I don't think exists anymore. But, And, it was great. We hung out, and he was really into CTI records, which I was really into CTI records. And we talked about, 70s jazz and stuff, because CTI was it's kind of the big jazz label in the 70s with, people like George Benson and, Hubert Laws. Who else did albums? A bunch of people did albums. Stanley Turrentine did a bunch of good albums on there. Astrid Gilberto. Anyway, and Noel was like just this guy who was super. That's the thing is, I wish people had. I think not too many people got to meet that Noel, and he was like super into it. And I went on like one of the best junkets I ever went on was a Monster Cable junket in '94, and they hauled some of us out there, and they basically took us to a bunch of studios. It was me, Neil Gator from Absolute Sound was there. It was the first time I met him. A lot of pro people. I think Neil and I were the only consumer people there, but everybody had like the best time. And we toured like the Man's Westwood Theater, which was all wired with Monster Cable, and we saw a movie there. And then we just like hung out around the UCLA area and rode this bus around, and we met Bruce Swedien and went to his studio, and we met Barbara Streisand's producer and went to his studio and all this kind of stuff. It was so much fun. And they like at lunch at Hamburger Hamlet, a former big LA icon restaurant, they handed out wire clippers and they handed out wire samples, and we're all sitting there stripping the wires, and they're talking about how this stuff's made and all that stuff. But from there, it kind of got, so it was a great company. I really thought, and they really were trying to do stuff that made sense. Right.
Yeah.
But then, I'm not sure when it really kind of started to turn. Certainly, they did a deal with Beats. They made the original, or they contracted for the original Beats headphones, because Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine didn't know how to get stuff made. They knew Monster Cable, because Monster Cable had, Monster Cable used to sponsor these CES concerts with, like George Benson, Aretha Franklin, really not only great artists, but like Boz Scaggs, but like sort of classy artists, not just like schlock, like artists you actually want to go see.
Yeah.
And I did several times.
Fleetwood Mac and one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were really like, they had really close ties to the music community. And so Jimmy Iovine, I guess, knew them and they went. But Monster signed a deal that had a sort of out in there, which Randy talks about in this video, where if Beats got sold, basically Monster could get cut out of the deal. Except for the 5% stake they owned or whatever, they could, stop sourcing everything through Monster Cable. And were you at the first Beats press conference?
I was not at the first one. Oh, no, wait. Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
At the Cedia show. Weirdly, at the Cedia show, which is all custom installation stuff, but they did it with headphones.
Yeah.
And all the press were saying, wait, $300 headphones, and they're going to sell them to kids? No way. This is never going to work. But it kind of, but then of course it worked, and Monster Cable made a fortune. And the press, but then that's when the press events started to get out of hand, because it was like Noel would kind of insist that you clap for everything.
Yep.
And then he berated, oh God, his poor PR people. I don't even want to name them. They know who they are. They know I love them. They're good friends, still good friends of mine. But like he kind of insisted that they haul all the press in to their office in New York, so Noel could berate the press for not making audio exciting enough. I think I was the editor of Home Theater Magazine at the time, and they were a big advertiser at first, but then they pulled back on it. And I said, well, it'd be a lot easier for us to do exciting audio coverage if people like you wouldn't pull back on your advertising.
I've got an interesting Monster related advertising. Well, not advertising, but sponsorship story as well. So roll back to, I think it was 2011, and Monster was doing a lot of things other than cables at the time. This was in the 3D TV boom, when all of the TV manufacturers were trying to convince us that we had to have TVs with 3D. And so let's talk about some video-related technical specifications, which we rarely do here on Audio Unleashed. But at the time, all of the different TVs, they had the shutter glasses, and the glasses had a different tint. And if I remember correctly, like LG's had like a blue tint and Samsung's had like a yellow tint, or maybe it was vice versa. But whatever it was, then when your TV would go into 3D mode, it would assume that you've got these colored filters over your eyes, and it would change the color temperature to adjust. Well, Monster wanted to get on a 3D TV craze, and so they introduced universal 3D glasses, which, to be fair, in their form factor, were more comfortable than either the LG or Samsung glasses. The problem is they had a red tint to them. So no matter what TV you used them with, the color just looked radically freaking wrong, right? So I did a review of these things for Napco. At the time I was writing for Home Tech Dell, and they were like, you got to do this review. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, yeah, this looks awful. And then I took photos like through the lenses of each of these 3D glasses with their appropriate TVs. And then I took, because I had an LG and a Samsung 3D TV at the time, and then I took photos through the Monster glasses of both and showed like the Monster looks awful on all of them, right? Because this color temperature is just radically wrong. And, I tried to pull my punches a little, and I tried to, Monster was a very big advertiser for Napco. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to lie, but maybe just talk about the fact that this is not to my taste or what have you, and include the photos. Noel freaked and honestly threatened to pull sponsorship of one of Napco's Cedia parties that year if they didn't yank the review entirely. And they did. I think it was either Eric Schwartz or Rick Albuck, who was like, one of them was just like, yep, review's got to go. And that was when I really soured on Monster forever. Also, interestingly enough, then Jerry Del Cadiano heard about that, called me and was like, I'll run the review. And that's how I started working with Jerry.
That's pretty funny. That's a great story.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of flashpoints for like when Monster started to go downhill. And one of them is when I was in Best Buy and I saw the Monster cable replacement AC cord for your dryer.
Oh, come on.
Like your clothes dryer. That would supposedly improve the performance of your clothes dryer.
Come on. Really?
Yeah. A lot of people didn't see that. I don't think it lasted long, but I'm kind of like, oh, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And they did like a big furniture line that was like this really gigantic, clunky furniture that was just like, and it weighed a ton. Oh my God. I got like they had a subwoofer in, it was like a subwoofer end table. Yeah. And boy, it was a really good subwoofer, really good subwoofer. But it weighed like 300 pounds or something. I can't remember. Was it 300? It was at least 200. It was, I'm a big guy. It was a struggle for me to get to wrestle this thing around. But then of course, then they went through the phase of suing everybody who was using the name Monster, including Disney, because they had Monsters Inc. And they sued Monster, the like energy drink or whatever. Yeah. And they sued, I was listening to NPR, and I think the PR person at the time was trying to get me to cover some Monster cable thing. And I was listening to NPR, and they were talking about how Monster was suing like Monster Miniature Golf in Connecticut or something, like this little miniature golf, mom and pop miniature golf place that had been around for 50 years or something. Yeah. They're suing them over the Monster name. Yeah. And I was just like, I'm not covering them. There's no way. I'm not going to say great things about this company that's bullying people. And then the guy, about the whole thing with Blue Jeans Cable, right? Which Randy didn't talk about.
I don't know about that. No.
Oh, this was classic. So there's a guy who started this company, Blue Jeans Cable. Yeah. And Monster was one of their things was they were suing people over, various patent claims, design patent claims, right? Which are design patents are kind of a little dicey anyway.
Yeah.
So they were basically claiming they had invented the RCA plug. They basically claimed they had a patent on the RCA plug.
Do you think RCA might have something to say about that?
Maybe RCA. But anyway, they had sent a frivolous patent claim to this guy who, I don't know his name, but who runs Blue Jeans Cable. And you're thinking, oh, and you know, so he wrote an open letter to Monster Cable, and it was titled, you know, Dear Monster Lawyers. And especially to press people who've been threatened with lawsuits, this was just awesome because, you know, a lot of them have, including me. And this was just awesome because he goes into it and he's like, you know, there's no legitimate claim for a patent here. You know, there's no, it's like, you know, if you want to, you're basically sending me drawings of your stuff, but you need to make specific claims about how what I'm doing infringes on your design, because what I'm doing is just a standard RCA plug. And, you know, now, anyway, but besides that, I calculated, you know, the amount of, you know, basically, you know, given a fair licensing fee of maybe, you know, 10% of my wholesale cost on the product, right? Given, you know, a typical licensing fee, your yearly revenues from me would be like a few $100s, which are not worth your legal costs to have done this. Like, you had to pay your lawyers more to do this than what you're going to get from me. Yeah. And so I started doing some digging and I found this monster company, this, you know, monster licensing company in the Bahamas.
Whoa. Homeboy brought receipts.
So all of a sudden, it's like, oh, it's all clear now. So they were beating up on all these different companies just to try to get licensing fees that could then be paid into Monster Licensing. But then, as this guy pointed out in the letter, the biggest licensor of Monster Licensing would be Monster Cable. So it's basically a way for them to funnel a lot of their money off into this Bahamas corporation for the tax advantages, right?
Wow.
So this whole thing of beating up on all these people on these frivolous trademark and patent claims was just to give them an excuse to funnel their income into the Bahamas.
Man.
And he said, and the cap to the whole thing was, he said, you know, if you want to take me to court, that's just fine. I'm a formal federal prosecutor. And I haven't been in court for a long time, but I really kind of miss it.
Wow. Man, that is some awesome, like, strong old man energy right there, right? That is just, wow. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So everyone was just, especially because, like, I felt bad because, like, I liked Noel Lee. I knew Noel Lee when he was a nobody, and he was really passionate about all this stuff. But then I think the Beats thing just pushed it over the edge, and people, you know, absolute power corrupts and money corrupts too. And I mean, he was making good money. I mean, he had at least one Ferrari before any of this stuff hit. He took me out for a ride in it, and he had a few, like, before any of this stuff happened. He was in Ferrari territory just with his audio cables.
Wow.
And you know, but that was the fun, good old days. And I feel like a lot of people have kind of criticized Noel, and I'm like, you know, I wish you'd have felt differently if you'd met him before. But anyway, but then he got into crypto. He got some guy into the company who really got him. This is all pretty, I don't know if this is documented. I've heard the scoop, but there was some guy named Prince something, but his name was Fred, and he went by Prince or something. And he basically kind of got the company credit card and ran it up, as I understand it, and got him into, like, doing some cryptocurrency and all this kind of crap. And basically the company and then they sued Apple.
Yeah.
Lost that suit badly.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. And just all this sort of, you know, over the whole Beats deal, because Apple bought Beats, and Monster, but I think Knoll had already sold his, because HTC bought Beats, as Randy talks about this too. HTC had bought Beats, and I guess Knoll sold his 5% then, but then Apple bought him, and then his 5% would have been worth 10 times as much.
Right.
And,
yeah,
so he sued them and got, it dragged out and sure spent a lot of money, got nowhere. And the company, as I understand, went bankrupt or kind of whatever, and ended up as just a licensing company. So I still get pitches for Monster products all the time.
Yeah.
But, they're Monster, generic Bluetooth speakers. They're, they'll pitch you things like, the iconic Monster brand and blah, blah, and decades of audio, blah, blah. I'm like, none of those people have anything to do with these products.
Yeah.
Now it's basically they license out the name to whatever companies that pay the licensing, and then those companies go buy products in China and, get them to what degree they're actually putting work into it. I don't know. Usually it's not much. And so anyway, it's just a licensable name. It's kind of like Acoustic Research, AR, is now on.
Yeah.
I think like cheap Bluetooth speakers for outdoors, that are waterproof. That they have like little lights built in them or something.
Yeah.
And and RCA. We were talking about RCA, and it's like RCA. I don't think is on TVs anymore, but there are some very fine RCA branded flat TV antennas. I just tested one for Wirecutter. It's a new pick.
Oh, interesting.
And they make really good ones. I don't know if it's from their legacy as a TV manufacturer. I don't know what's going on. But, that's another company where I really saw them in their glory days, and I saw them dwindle down to, they ruled the roost. They were the biggest TV. When I got into Video Magazine in '89, they by far had the biggest market share in TV, if you can believe that. Yeah. Sony was number 2.
Yeah. And then Zenith got big again in the early HD TV days. And then...
Yeah, because they were among the first.
Yeah. So... Anyway, I want to say like this is a really, really great video by Randy, but it falls into a series of videos that he's doing here recently that I really, really like. He did another similar video about MQA, and I have very, very complicated feelings about MQA because as a technology, I've always been highly skeptical of it. But then one of my favorite gear manufacturers in the frickin' world, NAD, is now completely and utterly in bed with MQA. And I hate that. I just don't understand why. But Randy's video about MQA and why it exists and the whole history of it was sort of cathartic for me. And I really, really loved it. So I'm going to link to that one in the show notes too. But it's like a whole series of videos that he's doing about like, hey, here's the whole history of this. And I think he's doing a really great job with all of them.
I do. I agree. And he's also good on camera and he's entertaining.
Yeah.
That helps a lot.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Are we wrapping this thing?
I think so, man. You ready to do some credits?
I am ready to do some credits.
I got a curveball to throw you this time, buddy.
All right. Go throw.
Well, I should say, as usual, this is a Butterburger production. We're producing it, whatever. But it's my turn to edit, mix and master and all of that. But here's the thing. I lately, and by lately, I mean for the past week, have been dabbling around with the idea of ditching Windows and moving over to Linux because Microsoft has done this thing where they're like, you can't have Windows 11 unless you've got a computer with these very specific specifications. Well, my computer is technically, in terms of horsepower, way more powerful than anything you would need to run Windows 11. But because it doesn't have this specific kind of chip, Microsoft is like, no, you can't have it, right? And there are ways to get around that, but then they're like, okay, you've got an unsupported operating system. You may not be eligible for updates. And I'm just like, I can't afford a new computer right now. And I don't want a new computer. I hate e-waste. Can I move to Linux? I've been playing around with it. I think I might be able to. The biggest test is, can I produce the podcast in Linux, right? Because a lot of the plugins that I rely on, like the iZotope stuff, gone. I can't use iZotope anything anymore. But a lot of the tone booster stuff that I love, the compressor that I love, the bus that I love, all of that, the EQ that I rely on, I can use. So I'm going to see if I can change my workflow enough to make the entire podcast in Linux. And if I can, I'm ditching Windows, buddy. So
okay,
this is going to be a big test for me. Hope it sounds good. It's going to be hard to do without RX elements, but you know, what are you going to do? So,
all right, music.
Music. Good question. I'm just going to use some old stuff from us. So
no, you're not. I got a new one.
Yeah, okay. One new one from you, and then one old one from us.
I have 4 notes of it.
Oh, interesting. What 4 notes are they?
But you know, dun, 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 dun. I'm kidding. But see, 4 notes, man. 4 notes can kind of make a composition. But
okay.
I don't know. But they're 4 notes. I actually recorded it yesterday with a little artist phone thing, a little thing I use for various random sound effects, and I was tapping on something like, oh, this sounds really cool and stupid. So good basis for a composition. So there you go.
I'm excited to hear it. So, okay, we'll have a new one from Brent and an old one from me and Brent, or maybe from Brent. I don't know. Look at the show notes if you want to know. So, well, cool, man. That's one episode. Another episode in the tank. Although we've still got one to do for patrons. So if you're a patron subscriber, stick around. We got one more for you. But everybody else, we appreciate each and every one of you. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you liked what you heard and wish there'd been a little bit more of it, we got some good news for you.
Indeed, we do. If you check out patreon.com/Audio Unleashed, all one word, you can get new episodes a little earlier than everybody else.
And sometimes it's like a day or two early. Sometimes it's nearly a week. We never really know until we start editing.
But the big plus is that you get extended cuts of every episode. And usually that's going to mean a whole extra segment that's about maybe a geekier topic or something that's a little more personal to us, or something that's just going to really appeal to the hardcore Audio Unleashed listener.
Yeah, what it boils down to is if you're somebody who would support Audio Unleashed on Patreon, we're going to make sure the bonuses to every episode are really aimed straight at your interests.
Yeah, and so if you want to hear these segments, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $3 a month, which is less than I spend every single day on my cup of coffee when I go to Starbucks to write my boring articles.
Yeah. One more time with that URL, that's patreon.com/Audio Unleashed.
Or Audio
Unleashed. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.